of housing or in the provision of brokerage services on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, or national origin. And whereas the 1968 and 1988 Federal Fair Housing Acts declare that it is a national policy to ensure equal opportunities in housing, and whereas fair housing laws guarantee the right to a housing market free from discrimination based on national origin, race, color, religion, sex, disability, and familial status. And whereas the state of Arizona recognizes and values the efforts of those who seek to reduce barriers to full and fair housing opportunities. And whereas Arizona salutes the organizations with a statewide focus on promoting fair housing opportunities for all Arizonans and who consider fair and affordable housing an important element for our society. Now, therefore, I, Sterling Buse, for Mayor Stephanie Irwin, Mayor of the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as Fair Housing Month in the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside, and do hereby urge all citizens of this community to comply with the letter and spirit of the Fair Housing Law. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the Pinetop-Lakeside, Arizona.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate that. We'll move on then to item D2, which is the presentation, discussion, and consider accepting the town's annual financial comprehensive report, ACFR, as well as the annual expenditure and limitation report, AELR, for the year ended June 30th, 2023. And we will have a presentation from Crimson Singleton of Hinton Burdick. I'm going to turn this over to Kevin.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Tonight is our annual presentation of our audit report and the annual expenditure limitation report. As you know, by state statute, we have to complete an audit in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles each year. And in just a little bit, we'll be joined by Crimson Singleton, a director at Hinton Burdick, to present this report to you. We had a good report this year. There are no findings. We have a strong fund balance. I would just like to mention the annual comprehensive financial report is a step above what a requirement is, just the standard audit report. So there's, as you can see, it's 100 pages long, and there's a lot more data in there included in that. At the end of the presentation, we will ask you to approve it, and then I've got to submit it to the state and put it on our website, and it'll stay on there for at least 5 years, but I leave them on there forever. So at this time, we'll turn it over to Crimson, who is joining us by Zoom, and she will give you the highlights of what our audit report contains.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hello, Mayor and Council. As Kevin said, my name is Crimson Singleton, and I'm a director here at Hinton Burdick, and we were engaged to perform the audit for this fiscal year 2023. Let's see, I'll share my screen here. Okay, so as we get started, we just wanted to thank Kevin and all of his team members and everyone at the town that helped us complete the audit. Kevin's really good to work with, and it takes a lot of time to just, besides your normal day-to-day activities running the town, to also try to get us stuff that we need and everything, all the numbers closed out and ready for us. So we appreciate everyone that helped us complete the audit. And as we're going through the presentation, if there's any additional insights that Kevin wants to add or anyone else, feel free to do so. You're in a lot of it, more of the day-to-day stuff, and so if you have any additional things you want to add, feel free to jump in. Or if there's any questions as we're going, we can take questions as well. But in your financial statements you received, there's a couple of letters in there, kind of towards the beginning. There's the letter of transmittal and management's discussion and analysis. These are items prepared by management. If you look at nothing else, these are high level, a good place to look. They're high level reviews and can provide some information without going through the whole thing. If you at least look at those, that'll give you a little bit of information. So in the financial statements, there's a few reports that we're required to include in there. And so I'll go over the results of those here. So there's one towards the beginning. It's pages 1 through 4. This is the independent auditor's report on the financial statements. And it's an unmodified or clean opinion there. So that's good. And then towards the end there's a couple more reports. There's one on compliance and internal control over financial reporting. And if we come across any significant issues over internal controls or compliance related items, we report them there. And there's no findings or anything that were required to be reported there. So clean opinion there. And then there's also a state compliance report. We're required to go through a lot of the state laws and things that the town's required to follow related to financial matters. And during our review of the state compliance, we found no findings there either. So overall, yeah, as Kevin said, clean report, no findings. So we commend the town for that. And then this is a separately issued report, the AELR or annual expenditure limitation. The town's required to stay below a certain threshold. You're under the home rule, so it's your budgeted expenses. You must be below that. And the expenditures were below the limit, so you're good there. All right, so that's kind of the results. And then I was going to go over a few just highlights on the numbers themselves. So government-wide, the town had what's the government accounting term for equity. The total net position was about almost 6.5 million at June 30th, 2023. And then over time, increases or decreases can indicate whether the town's financial health is improving or deteriorating. It is expected to swing a little bit up and down depending on what you have going on. But if you see trends then of continual downfall or increases, that can shed some light on what's going on. But for fiscal year 23, the net position did decrease 464,000, but as we'll see, the town's doing fine. So this is taken directly from the financial report. This is called the Statement of Activities. Might be kind of hard to read there, but this is overall government-wide, the revenues and expenses of the town. On that left-hand column there was 11.4 million in expenses for the year. And then there's a few sources of revenue. The program revenues, those are things like charges for services or grants and contributions that directly contribute to a specific function or purpose for the town. So those were about 1.6 million total program revenues. And then down at the bottom right hand, those are where the general revenues are showing. So those are things like taxes and just a few miscellaneous interest income, revenue sharing, things that aren't designated for a specific function but can just be generally used at the town level. And so there was 9.3, almost 9.3 million in revenues there. So you can see that gives you the change in net position, the decrease of 464,000, and ending net position almost 6.5 million there. So, and then some of the capital asset activity, the governmental capital assets overall increased about 800,000. The capital asset additions, so new purchases, were about 1.6 million, and then depreciation on the existing assets was $883,000. And then for the proprietary capital assets, they decreased about $15,000. There were no additions, it was just the depreciation for the year. And then the significant capital asset additions for the year, there was the police department building construction in progress. There was about $944,000 additions, and then total project costs to date as of the end of the year were $1.3 million. And then there was some machinery and equipment and vehicles purchased as well. About $445,000 in equipment and $135,000 in vehicles. So, and then this is a long-term debt. The total debt of the town, and this is excluding other long-term liabilities such as accrued compensated absences and net pension liability. The total debt of the town was $11.7 million at the end of the year. The governmental debt decreased by net about $450,000. There was a new note. There were some new notes payable that were added for $520,000 for vehicles and equipment, and there were debt payments of $656,000. And then the net pension liability. The balance there was almost $4 million for the public safety retirement pension and just the general Arizona retirement pension. And this decreased $4.2 million from the previous year, and that was because of the bond that was issued in fiscal year 22 to pay down the public safety pension liability. There's a 1-year lag the way that pensions are reported. So the debt was issued in fiscal year 22, and then the reduction for the pension is shown in 23. So now I'll just go over a few fund financial highlights, and what we'll be looking at is the fund balance or net position. So in other words, the equity of that fund. And so basically it's all the assets in the fund, cash, receivables, less any liabilities such as accounts payable. And I will mention as well, in the funds, as you may or may not know, the governmental funds, they utilize modified accrual accounting. So long-term debt and capital assets are not reported in the funds. So when we're looking at fund balance and the assets and liabilities, that does not include capital assets. So here we go. Here's the general fund. As you can see, it's that top line, the green line, that's unassigned fund balance. And unassigned means it can be used at the town's discretion. It's not earmarked. There's no restrictions on it. And it jumped quite a bit in fiscal year 21. A lot of that was due to COVID funding and also increased sales taxes. And then 22, it jumped a little more. And then fiscal year 23, at the end of 23, the general fund balance was $3.5 million. So it decreased slightly, about $240,000. The revenues were fairly constant. And expenditures increased a little bit due to salaries and wages, but overall the fund's in a healthy position. The GFOA, which stands for Government Finance Officers Association, they recommend having at least 2 months worth of operating expenses in fund balance, and the town currently has 6 months worth of operating expenses in fiscal year, at the end of fiscal year 23. So overall, it's improved. It's in a healthy position, has a little bit of reserves there to help cover any unexpected downfalls. So that's the general fund. Here's the HERF fund. These funds are all restricted. They must be used for street-related projects. This fund is expected to vary a little bit. A lot of times resources will be saved up and then a big project will be done. So it's common for this one to bounce around a little bit. At the end of fiscal year 23, there was almost $700,000 in resources available for the HERF fund. So that's the HERF fund. Here's the Recreation and Tourism Fund. These funds are all committed, so and a commitment means like a resolution or ordinance, something formal internally within the town that says these funds are used in a specific way. So at the end of fiscal year 23, there's $730,000 available in the Recreation and Tourism Fund. It did increase a little bit, about $130,000. The revenues decreased a little bit in the fund, but expenditures and transfers out to capital projects also decreased quite a bit. So the culmination of those expenditure decreases helped to raise that fund balance a little bit. So yeah, at the end of fiscal year 23, there's about $730,000 in available resources there. This is the Capital Projects Fund. This fund is expected to vary. Generally, there's not a lot of fund balance in here. The revenue source in this fund is just transfers from other funds, and then capital assets and also your long-term debt payments are recorded in this fund. So as payments come due, whichever fund is utilizing the assets or wants to purchase the assets, oftentimes will transfer money into this fund, or for projects or whatever that are going on will be transferred into this fund. That top line, the restricted, it represents restricted fund balance. This was from the debt that was issued in fiscal year 22. There were debt proceeds that were received and recognized as revenue, but they have not been spent yet. And they are being spent on the police building. So that's why it spiked up in 22. And then in 23, you were continually working on the project. And at the end of the year, there was 1.6 million restricted debt proceeds that are still available to be spent. And then that bottom line is just unassigned fund balance, or assigned fund balance. So that's just money that's been accumulating in the fund that's available to use for a capital project or debt service needs. So that had $691,000 at the end of the year of assigned fund balance. And then this is the solid waste fund. The top line there. So this fund is on the full accrual basis, so it does have capital assets and long-term debt factored into this fund. So that the purple line, the 68,000, that represents it's called net investment in capital assets, and so that's all of the capital assets that have been acquired for the fund, less any long-term debt used to purchase those assets. So that fund balance or net position is 68,000. The bottom line is the unrestricted net position, and that's negative 63,000. And basically, and then this fund is hasn't been self-sustaining, so I just wanted to throw in that orange line. That's transfers in. So basically, to cover cash requirements in the fund, as services may not, charges for services may not be covering the entire balance, expenses in the fund. The general fund has been transferring in money to help cover the expenses in this fund. So it's in fiscal year 19 was when the fund was initially opened up and just barely starting. In fiscal year 20, there were several transfers in to help buy the equipment and kind of get the fund rolling. And then kind of as the fund's been going along, and fiscal year 23, $73,000 was required to cover expenditures in the fund. So the cash is basically, it's just maintaining like $100 in the fund, and the way that just to cover the cash requirements in the fund, money's just been transferred in from the general fund as needed to cover that. So overall, yeah, it's not self-sustaining at this point, and the general fund is helping to cover the cash requirements in the fund. So that's the solid waste fund. And then this is just total cash, government-wide. That bottom line, as I mentioned, is the fund we were just looking at. It's basically carrying $100 in there, and then the general fund's transferring cash as needed. And then all the rest of the funds is the top line, the governmental activities. And there's $7.2 million in cash at the end of fiscal year 23. So overall, you can see, I've had a couple good years that really kind of helped boost your cash levels and your reserves a little bit. So overall, government-wide, the government has a pretty good balance there for cash. So that's what I had to go over. Hopefully those trends kind of helped a little bit and you can see what's going on. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And if you think of anything later or don't want to ask now, you're welcome to contact me. There's my phone number and email address. And we appreciate everyone at the town and the opportunity to work with you on this audit every year. So.
Thank you, Crimson. That was very informative. Council members, Keith or Kevin, you have something to add?
Yeah, I would just like to add a few things. First off, I'd like to thank Crimson for all her help with this because it's a monumental undertaking, and Stacy for all of her help with this as well. A couple of other things. This report will be on our website if you all approve it tonight. The annual comprehensive financial report as well as the annual expenditure limitation report will be on our website, and we will have a copy here. I wanted to point out that our net position went down in a couple of funds this year, but it's nothing to be worried about. That was beginning cash that we had budgeted to spend in the general fund and in the streets fund. In the capital projects fund, we're spending down the bond money. So that's why that went down. So it's not that there's a trend of anything bad happening there. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is on the annual expenditure limitation report. I don't have that on your desk, but it was in the packet that went out, and I have copies here. Since we are a home rule town, basically our limit is whatever the council approves as the budget, which for this year was $23,912,000. Our expenses were $12 million, so we were $11 million under that. If we didn't have home rule, our state limitation for this year would have been $6,171,000. So we would have been half over. So that's why it's so important for us to have home rule. Our current home rule, you have to put it before the voters every 4 years. We'll have to do it again in 26.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilor Smith?
Yeah, I just have one question. A few years back, we made a decision to do a bond for the PSPRS thing, and it was kind of dependent on what happened with interest rates and all that. So was that turned out to be a really good decision, or is it sort of okay, you know?
I would say it turned out to be a really good decision. For one day, we were 100% funded in our unfunded liability. But that lasts for one day. And the way PSPRS calculates it, they do it on some sort of 3-year rolling average. So we're not at 100% now for the unfunded liability, but we're way up there, about 95 or something like that. I'd have to look at it. So we were at 100% for a day, and then we're a little bit under. But if we hadn't done that, our contribution rates and what you would see in the police budget would be going through the roof in contributions to.
That's what I was thinking with the rates going up.
Yeah.
That was a good decision for us.
It was a fantastically good decision. We went
Good
from
foresight.
like 56% contribution rate to 12%, something like that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I think the other side of it is it kind of gives us more of a sure amount that we have to contribute. So that's been really helpful with our budgeting process. And I think part of the gamble was the stock market and the investment portfolio going up, which we can clearly see that's definitely gone up. So I do think.
Yeah, I know it levels out our
Exactly.
helps our budgeting, I guess I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And over long term, we'll save a fantastic amount of money than if we hadn't done that. If we hadn't done that, in about 20 years, we wouldn't have been able to afford a police department because the benefits would have been too high.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Vice Mayor?
Just to clarify, the information you and I talked about, inaccurate, kind of dated information, that's all been updated, it appears. Is that right?
Yes, so in the original report that was sent out earlier in the week, there was a sentence that was wrong on page 23 in the footnotes, and I hadn't caught it. I had fixed it in the introductory letter, and it had to do with when we changed our process for the direct election of the mayor. So it was right in the introductory part of the audit report, but it was wrong on page 23. The copy you're looking at tonight and what will be posted, I fixed that, so that's all correct now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Heisler, do you have any questions? Is he on, Christy? Oh, okay. Well, if he has any questions.
You guys hear me?
Yes, thank you. Do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Kevin, thank you for all the good work. And Stacy, I know it's a team effort, and we appreciate what you guys do. And I know it pulls in other staff as well. So thank you. It's always nice to get this clean audit and be done for another year. It's kind of hard to look at it because we're almost a year past it now.
Yeah.
Because I know our position has really changed, but it's nice to know we're on the right track. So if there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion then. Vice Mayor?
I move to accept the town's annual comprehensive financial report and the annual expenditure and limitation report for the year ended June 30th, 2023 as presented.
I second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Councilor Heisler?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. Appreciate all that work. Thank you for being with us tonight, Crimson.
Yep, thank you.
We'll move on then to item D3, which is discussion and consideration of resolution number 24-1704, awarding a contract with Burns McDonnell to conduct a solid waste feasibility study for the town of Pinetop-Lakeside. Matt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In January, we discussed this at our work session, and it was decided at that point that we probably needed to look into a feasibility to determine what direction that the solid waste needs to go in. As you saw tonight, we've always lost money in the collection center. However, the service has been greatly appreciated by the community, and we have a lot of people that really enjoy our service. However, this feasibility study will look into not only should we continue that service, or should we contract with somebody, or should it be some sort of a mix. And all those options will come back to you so that you can make an informed decision on how we move forward. I think that this is an important decision for the community because it affects everybody, but it's also something that we've needed to deal with for many, many years. We have multiple companies traveling all of our roads, which puts high stress on the very expensive assets that we already have. So we'll need to clean that up, and this will help do that. We have trash cans that are in neighborhoods that are full-blown garbage cans that, you know, we get complaints about, and we get a lot of complaints from the citizens, yet you guys as council have also gotten a lot of complaints from different citizens on this same topic. This is a big chunk of change to put towards a feasibility study, but one of the things that I would add to that is it's important that we get somebody that has high quality and understands exactly what they're looking at. And in this situation, I think that what they've proposed is valid. I've looked through all of their documents and looked through all of what they proposed to do, and they're planning on putting quite a bit of work in here. And I know if I was sitting in your shoes, I would want to make sure that I had the best opinion that we could get, because this is not an easy decision to make. So with that, that's kind of the overall. I have reached out to Scottsdale. I've talked to the director of waste at Scottsdale. We've reached out to multiple different towns and cities across Arizona, Queen Creek being one of them. They had the exact same study done. They actually were told that it would be in their best interest to move forward with their own trash service, and ended up going with waste management. So the option is still yours when we get to the end. Just because they're giving you their opinion doesn't mean you can go what direction you need to go. They're going to give you what the options are available. However, everybody that we talked to was very, very impressed and very happy with the work that Burns and McDonnell's did. And we also were able to get the ratings from Scottsdale. That showed the evaluation criteria that was in your packet. So it shows you what they based those evaluations on. And looking through those, you can see there's a significant difference between their two. So with that being said, I think that my suggestion to you guys would be to move forward with this feasibility study to Burns and McDonnell. Thank
you, Matt. Questions or comments for Matt on this? I think we discussed it quite a bit previously, and go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Just one thing, we did discuss it quite extensively. I just wanted, again, the fees that are set up, we can kind of pick and choose if we don't want to do one. I mean, it's not a whole complete package that has to be done right. They'll charge us as we see fit what we need to have them do. Is that right?
Yeah, if you get down to, it looks like it's 7 in mine, but I don't know what it is in the packet.
39, where it goes over the tasks. And
yeah, so those different tasks could be separated out if we so desire to separate those out. If we get down and get through a few of these tasks and we decide that we want to stop there, we could stop there if we wanted to. But I think overall, I would complete the whole study.
Okay.
That'll be your guys' choice.
Kind of seems like we need to complete it so that we get the accurate representation of what the best course of action is for us.
Yeah, and I made them put in here some things that they didn't even suggest. Like, I wanted them to present to council. I didn't want it to be from a staff member. I think it's important that we get the third-party input on this one. This is not something I want to make a decision on. This is something I think, and I don't want to lead you in any way, shape, or form. So I think we need that opinion from the third party. So in the final phase, which is task 5, they will be presenting to you guys, and it won't be us that is presenting.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Just to follow, what are we looking at as far as a timeline on this?
You know, I didn't talk to him about that, but I think it's 4 to 6 months.
That's what's in
I think that's what it's.
Yeah, the documents say 4 to 6.
Well, once we approve the contract, I would assume they could get started on it as soon as possible, as soon as feasible.
Yeah, there's a lot of studying that goes involved, and we also set in there up to 3 different optional proposed areas. So we can look at not just the town limits, but the areas of discussion that we've had recent people wanting us to annex. So we'll look at those areas as pieces of it. We can pick out which ones we think we should add that are maybe reasonable or maybe not. So that'll be nice to have those other thoughts in there, because then that way it might give you you know what, let's wait until, if this goes forward, let's wait till that's done, because that makes a whole lot more sense. You know, the economy of scales when you start talking with solid waste are important. And one of the things we've always struggled with this is our size has caused us to not be able to do those things for our citizens.
Thank you for thinking ahead like that. It's much appreciated. Councilor Heisler, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Krigbaum.
I think it's very obvious that you have chosen somebody who has a lot of experience in this area. This is not reinventing the wheel. They are very good at this, and they certainly have really laid it out so that I think it looks very straightforward. So we should, the only thing I was concerned, where does the money come from? Do we have the money okay? Can we move into or do we have to wait until the next fiscal year?
No, we've identified part of the money and we will identify the rest as we go along.
Okay.
If we even get to all of it during this fiscal year.
Oh, right, because, yeah, here we are in March, almost into April now already. So.
Right, and we won't be, if you all pass it, we won't be paying the $66,000 tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It'll be spread over the 4 to 6 months that they do the project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion then. Vice Mayor.
I move to approve Resolution 24-1704, awarding a contract with Burns McDonnell to conduct a solid waste feasibility study as presented and authorize the town manager to execute all necessary documents.
Thank you. We have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion to second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, Councilor Heisler.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Matt. I think
you,
we'll
Mayor.
all look forward to seeing how this study comes out.
We are excited.
Yes. Anyway, that concludes the business of the meeting tonight. I would just like to wish everybody a happy Easter, and please remember to join us next Saturday, March 30th. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.